What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back on Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my first take for the Commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby, it's ABB. Always be brewing it, as we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're starting off another week of Final Fantasy content, and we're covering one of a really interesting equipment commanders out of the set in Firion, Wild Rose Warrior. A 3-mana 3/3 mono red rebel warrior with two key abilities to me. First off, all of our quick creatures we control have haste. It's a really fun ability. I don't think it makes a big difference. And then the second one, whenever a non-token equipment comes in, we get to make a token that's a copy of it, except it has its equipment abilities cost 2 less to activate, and we lose it at the beginning of the next upkeep, but it's basically the end of the turn, right? And these are both really interesting abilities. One, Firion's going to allow us to get our creatures in right away with the haste, but I think we also want to prioritize equipment that either are going to equip for free for their copy or very cheap for their copy. The other way I kind of look at the second ability is that there are going to be equipment where maybe we can't equip it the turn it comes in, but because of the reduction, we can equip the copy and still get a really huge amount of value out of that equipment, even if we can't get the real one. And then the last thing is, because we're making token copies of permanents, there are artifacts that are going to retain their mana value. So if we have any way to sacrifice artifacts for value, right, we can do that, and we are going to play with a little bit of that. But I'll say a quick thank you to the channel member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a teeny bit early, check it out down below. But all right, we gotta have creatures to equip to. It can't just be Firion, although I think Firion's a perfectly fine creature to attach to. We want to get some options. Truthfully, our options aren't as great as we have in a color combination like Boros, right? Where I think equipment does get a little bit more support. Champion of the Flame seems fun, a 1/1 that gets +2/+2 for each equipment attached to it. Emberheart Challenger has prowess, and whenever it becomes the target of an ability, so like an equip ability for the first time each turn, you get to exile a card and you can play that card this turn. It also has prowess, so it can grow. You have something like Freya that has flying on our turn. It can tap for a red to help cast or equip equipment, but it's also just a flyer on our turn that can be a really great body to equip too. Rook, Hexcold Nabber says whenever a creature other than Rook dies or attacks, you may attach all equipment attached to that creature to Rook. This is a really interesting ability, and Rook having Trample and Haste could mean that it could hit for some big damage. Valduk's a really fun one. For each Aura and equipment attached to it, you make a 3/1 Elemental with Trample and Haste for the turn. Get those tokens, allow them to get in and do some big damage. And then I really like the new Vincent here. Whenever one or more creatures we control hit a player in combat, we put a counter on Vincent. And then if Vincent hits an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent if it's power 7 or greater. And we have a lot of equipment that can give things like double strike, trample, so it'd be pretty easy for Vincent to hit really hard if we can have it actually connect. Okay, well, what equipment are we looking for? I think there's a lot of ways we can approach this. One of the biggest things we need to remember is that Firion gives equipped creatures haste. So, for example, Batterskull might look odd. This is an equipment that makes a 0/0 germ that it attaches to, that gives it an ability. So Batterskull is going to come in, it'll get the germ, and the germ will have haste because it's equipped. And then the copy of Batterskull, which will come in and be a couple less to equip, is going to make another germ. And we're basically going to get 2 4/4 Vigilant Lifelink germs, for 5 mana. Now, at the end of the turn, right, the Batterskull will fall away, and so will the germ, right, unless we attach something else to it. And that's okay, but the point is for that turn, right, we get added value. You can look at this with a lot of your Living Weapon or your Firmiridan equipment from like Phyrexia LB1 and things like that make you that Rebel token when it comes in. The only difference between, of course, Living Weapon and Firmiridan is, right, Firmiridan makes a 2/2 Rebel, right, whereas the Living Weapon's a 0/0 germ that's just going to die, right, so there's the big difference there. Adaptive Omni Duel gives a buff for each artifact we control, and when a creature attacks, it lets you dig. So here's an option to dig for more things. Of course, Bloodforged Battle Axe makes a copy of itself whenever the equipped creature hits a player, and so it can start making more copies of itself. So even that copy that basically gets to equip for free has a chance to make a copy of itself before that one goes away, and we can just stack these battle axes. Brotherhood Regalia. Remember that any artifact that isn't legendary, right? We can really take advantage of that second copy. So if we have multiple legendary creatures, Brotherhood Regalia, the turn it comes in, could give multiple legendary creatures the ability to not be blocked. Buster Sword, right? That copy gets to equip for 0, which is a huge ability, giving it that extra upside if we hit somebody and playing that spell. Chainsaw, I think, is kind of fun. Comes in and deals 3 damage to a creature, so when the other one comes in, you're dealing an extra 3. Whenever one more creature dies, you put a rev counter on Chainsaw, and you get a buff for them with the rev counters on Chainsaw. What I think is interesting about Chainsaw is that even if all your creatures die, say to a board wipe, Chainsaw still grows, and then Chainsaw can be a nice piece for later. But again, you get 2 copies of its first ability. The original Chainsaw maybe up to a minimum of at least +1/+0, if not +2/+0 because of the triggers, and then it just gets to grow over the course of the game. Of course, Corey Steelcutter, if we can play it right, can come in and get us multiple monks, right? The turn it comes in, and then Corey Steelcutter is just great, right? Getting those monks and also giving creature trample and haste is a huge thing, especially when you need to, do it at the right time. Darksteel Plate giving indestructible is huge, and again, good way to keep it on Firion, another creature to keep them alive. Dragonwing Glider is the first example of these for Mirrodin abilities. Remember that because of Firion's ability, the copy of the Glider brings in another Rebel that's attached, and both of them are 4/4 that get to attack that turn, not only because they have haste because of the Glider, but they also have haste because of Firion, right? And then now you're getting so much value for each of these for Mirrodin things that we're casting. Genji's Glove giving another combat, I think, is a huge deal, especially the wider our board is or the better our board is. If we can pair this with something like Gilded Pinions or things that, Gilded Pinions gives flying. You have things that give trample. There's so many ways we can take advantage of giving our creatures evasion or some sort of way to hit harder so that multiple combats is beneficial to us, right? Helm of the Host has a lot of different angles of what we can do with it. There's a lot of creatures we'd love to have extra copies of, and there's a lot of things that you're just going to get better as you get extra copies of them. Think about Firion, having Helm of the Host on it and getting multiple copies of equipment. There's plenty of lines we can take with Helm of the Host. Hexplate Wallbreaker, what the turn it comes in is not going to give the Rebel that attacks with it, this nice ability, but you're going to get a second one. Whenever a quick creature attacks, if it's the first combat of the turn, untap each attacking creature, and there's an additional combat. So technically the turn you play Wallbreaker, Firion's out, you would technically get 2 extra combats. You just wouldn't untap for the second one. But I think it's still important that you have something like Wallbreaker that can give you an extra combat, just like Genji Glove. Infantry Shield can make us a bunch of warriors, potentially just add some more value to the board that our opponents have to deal with. Laneline Axe can start on the battlefield in our opening hand if we want it to. Otherwise, it comes down giving a creature double strike and trample, a really brutal combination, right? The bigger a creature gets. Warhammer giving lifelink and trample, and then the copy would equip for 1. Masterwork of Ingenuity is one of a couple options you have that can come in as a copy of any equipment, which is fun to get not only another copy of it, but another token copy. Feast and Famine is going to be able to automatically equip, give that creature that protection from black and green, and then that brutal ability that when it hits, you have that player discard a card and untap all your lands to just play more things or leave up, removal or anything like that. Sword of Vengeance giving that stack of abilities: First Strike, Trample, Vigilance, Haste, and then again the copy's only equipping for 1. Tarion Soul Cleaver is a really interesting one. Whenever another artifact or creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you get to put a counter on an equipped creature. So the copy leaving, right, will trigger Tarion Soul Cleaver. But also remember that it's not your graveyard. So even our opponent's things leaving is going to give Tarion Soul Cleaver the way to buff up the creature we want it to be on. And I think it's just a very interesting card that can help grow our creatures over the course of multiple turns, depending on what we put the Soul Cleaver on. And then Thran Power Suit, handing out that Ward 2 is a huge deal. Again, we can have all these things to give indestructible, right? But if you don't have a way to stop hexproof or something like that, single target removal is so cheap in Commander, and I think Thran Power Suit is going to help a ton, especially with the real one coming in and then the copy coming in and equipping right away, to help us on a big attack if we need it. But it's not just about having these equipment. We also kind of want things that are going to help us out. We have things like Aki Battle Squad that can get us a extra combat each turn. Just another thing to attack. Gilgamesh, I think, makes a ton of sense in a deck like this, getting you some equipment whenever, look at the top 6 whenever it enters or attacks, getting an equipment, any number of them from among them onto the battlefield. And then when they come in, you can attach them to a samurai, which is Gilgamesh, which is great. We also get Godo, got reprinted in the bonus sheet as Gilgamesh. Now, Godo is a very interesting interaction with Helm of the Host. So it's a bottom ability. Says whenever it attacks for the first time each turn, you untap it and all samurai you control. And after this, there's an additional combat phase. Well, what this effectively is going to do for us is that with the Helm of the Host on Godo, you make another copy of Godo that will get to attack for the first time that turn, giving you extra combats. And if we can pair this with either enough times to attack with Godo to win the game, or other creatures with vigilance or the ability to untap, these extra combats can really lead us to a big turn with a lot of damage dealt in combat. Raban lets you attach up to one target equipment to a target attacking creature whenever it attacks, which is pretty fun, allows you to get the right thing on at the right time. Gold Warden's Gambit has affinity for equipment, makes a bunch of rebels, and you can attach equipment to those rebels if you want to. And the Magnetic Theft just lets you attach an equipment to a creature at the right time. It can be really good, right? Maybe so it doesn't block the right way. You take a double strike trampler like Leyline and just put it on something else and get a bunch of value the turn you use it. Blacksmith's Talent comes in and makes a little equipment. Level 2 lets you start equipping for free at start of combat. And then level 3 gives all our equipped creatures double strike and haste, and we'll happily take the double strike if we need to get there. And then Bludgeon Brawl is really interesting. So each non-creature, non-equipment artifact is an equipment with Equip X and gives a buff. This is useful for things like mana rocks and things like that we're going to have laying around that we can also equip. But Bludgeon Brawl won't do that much all the time, but I think at minimum, Soul Rings, your Signets, your Talismans are going to be able to, equip up and give us a little bit extra value. But I've said it before in the show, and I'll say it again. No decks. Oh no, I'm not there yet. I'm sorry. We got another round. I apologize for that. This section, I wanted to focus on how can we either pay off damage being dealt, or how can we sacrifice artifacts. So Broadside Bombardiers says you can sack another creature or artifact as long as it's attacked this turn to deal 2+ the sacrifice permanent's mana value to any target. Remember that when you copy a permanent on the battlefield, if it has a mana value, the copy retains the mana value. So Broadside should be able to, get out 3 damage at minimum, if not more, to something as long as Broadside attacks. And it's a Menace Haster, so it's going to be a little bit harder to block. Gut lets you sack another creature or an artifact to make a 4/1 skeleton with Menace that's tapped and attacking. Well, let's say you got that copy and equipment and you can't equip it. Well, Gut can just sack it to make that 4/1 skeleton that gets to stick around and be something you can potentially soup up later because it has Menace. I think that's a nice thing. Kedis just says, well, if Firion hits a player, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. The damage you deal to each other opponent won't be commander damage, but I mean, the bigger Firion gets, the harder Kedis is going to make it for our opponents, because if there's someone we can easily attack, right, Kedis just gets to spread that damage out. Krenko says we can sacrifice an artifact to put a counter on each goblin we control. And you may say, but Millsy, we don't have many goblins in the deck. Well, that's what Krenko's bottom ability says, becomes really good. So whenever an artifact is put into our graveyard from the battlefield, we can pay a red. If we do, we make a goblin and it gets haste. So, we can start making the goblins as these equipment go away and then sacking them to buff all our goblins and kind of help us kind of go wide as we're doing this other game plan. And then we have something like Slowbad, which can sacrifice that copy to get red mana to basically cast those equipment or equip them, right? So this is kind of interesting, right? Again, using these copies to our advantage as we push towards ending the game. As I tried to say before and I skipped it at the wrong time, I said it before, I'll say it again, no deck's ever complete. And going into testing, I think there's a lot of ways we can make the deck better. Do we want more of the job select or for Mirrodin equipment? You see that there on Summarized Katana. That we can take advantage of. And the Katana makes a ton of sense with something like Godo, if you want to go that line more frequently, right? It untaps those samurais, so that's pretty helpful. Fervent Champion's another great creature to equip to. I was just trying to find some other things in the deck, but it's great because it costs 3 less to target with all your equipment, so making it really easy to equip to. And then the Rosette's an interesting equipment. When it's equipped, you get a 2/2 token that's attacking, and then all your creatures get menace when that creature attacks. So it's just a really nice ability to kind of make yourself a little bit harder to block. But truthfully, I think as we go into testing and you were to test this, I think you'd want to see, do we have enough equipment? If we need more equipment, obviously we look into that. But otherwise, are we finding enough creatures to equip? If we aren't, maybe we consider adding more. Do we need more removal, more card draw? These are the things that we look at in testing as we try to make our deck better. But let's do what we love to do most on the channel and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of our playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to just show off all our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what are we looking for in opening hands and how are we going to kind of maneuver. Only a tool in your hand, but you get the Soul Ring. We can put the Leyline X down and just start with it down. It may seem kind of counterintuitive because don't we want the copy of it? But I think we don't mind because at the end of the day, later it could be just easy to equip for just 3. I mean, turn 1, you're looking at Mountain to Soul Ring into Mind Stone, and we're going into turn 2 with 5 mana, right? And we could even, get Firion in and keep the ball rolling, right? Depending on what we have. So I like this one. You've got the Blasphemous Act for the board wipe. You've got a Sword of Vengeance and other great equipment. So we've got lots of stuff to deal with. We're just going to work our way right up the ladder. We're going to start with that ley line on the battlefield as well. That's part of its ability. Turn 2, we see Ember Cleave, a great equipment that, of course, isn't going to work for Firion's ability, but it's because it's legendary. But again, Double Strike and Trample, a really killer ability that we want to take advantage of. So if I go 3 for Firion, here I've got 2 mana left. Can't get that Sword of Vengeance down, but that's okay. I like just getting ourselves right settled up and ready to go. Now here we've got 6 mana, so we can equip the Leyline Axe. Again, we could play Sword of Vengeance, but remember, it's not going to allow us to tap it if we do that, because it'd be 1 to equip the copy. Eki Battle Squad's not a bad creature at all on a future turn. Ember Cleave can come down for less mana depending on the amount of creatures that are attacking, but I think part of me really just wants to equip the Leyline Axe, but it's kind of odd here. Do you wait? Do you put the Vengeance in and just equip the copy of the Vengeance for 1? And I've got 2 mana left, but I think you attack with Firion right here now. It's a 5/3 with First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, right? It's going to be able to hit kind of hard, right? And then that Vengeance token's going to go away. And then as we come to our next turn, my thought is, do you do something like that? Equip up the Leyline Axe. I've got 4 mana left. If you equip the Vengeance, go deep. Do we crack the Mind Stone, try to draw into something else? I mean, that's my thought. Try to find some more draw. We just don't have the mana this turn to do it, right? Seize the Spoils would help, right, on a future turn of us dig for some more mana, but we could attack with Firion, right? 4/4 Double Strike Trample, hit hard there. And then here, coming back with 6 mana, I like the Seize the Spoils to dig deeper and draw. We could pitch something away. We could just dump Eki Battle Squad in here and get multiple combats, because of course Firion will be modified, so it's going to give us another combat. I mean, Firion could result in 8 damage this turn if we do that. We could go the Thran Power Suit route, get the copy. The copy goes for free, right? So already Firion to be a 4, 5, 6. We could put the other Thran Suit on it for 9, so it'd be an 18. Or we could, crack the Seize the Spoils. I kind of like just doing this. Now it's got word 4. It's going to be pretty hard to target. Again, 4, 7, 10, right? Because the Thran Power Suits are going to see each other. So now Firion's a 20 with Double Strike or 20 effective damage overall with Trample, hitting really hard, right? The copy goes away. And now, is maybe the turn where you just slam the Eki Battle Squad and let it go to there. You could go Freya, play the Seize the Spoils, and start digging for some more. You could even Seize the Spoils plus put the, Sword of Vengeance on. There's a lot of ways here, but Firion can be a Voltron threat. I think that's what's interesting about this deck is you could easily just make this a Voltron deck with Firion, or maybe in a different hand we can find more of our go-wide options. But let's get into playtest number 2 here. Keeping another 2-letter with Soul Ring. Well, we see a couple different equipment. We see Diamond Pickaxe, which only equips for 2 and lets you get some treasures whenever you attack. Lizard Blades giving out that double strike. Now, I don't actually know off the top of my head if this would reduce a reconfigure, right? Because reconfigure isn't an equip ability, but it could be interesting, right? To at least have another copy of Lizard Blades, maybe potentially. You could even equip the copy of Lizard Blades to have it have haste, right? But I don't mind this one. We got a couple pieces of equipment. Turn one, I think we just get into the same Soul. Turn two, we can get Firion down. I could get the beat stick down or the pickaxe down, and either of them can attack, and the copies can attach for free. One of them's just giving plus and plus one. One of them's getting menace. I think the menace has a better shot of getting Firion in this turn. And if it hits a player, we get a treasure. Let's just say I would imagine on turn two we should be able to hit somebody in there for menace and get a treasure. There's the battle skull, the batter skull, right, that we talked about. We are at 5 mana, so batter skull could make a ton of sense. Again, getting the germ and then having the copy of the germ, or we try to set up maybe a little bit more for next turn. Um, play the pickaxe, right? Get the copy of the pickaxe. We could go what? 2, 4, 5 is my thought here. Really soup up here. We've still got menace, so we're 4, 5. We're a 6/5 with menace, and when we attack, we're making 2 treasures, and when we hit, we're making a treasure. So I mean, again, on turn 3, I'm sure we're gonna find the ability to get through for that, right? My thought there was that just builds us up a little bit more mana, so that we're not just spending our entire turn on a batter skull. Drywing Glider may even be better as well, especially providing the same amount of damage. I guess the only difference is Batter Skull does give you lifelink, right? Which I feel like could potentially be more to somebody versus another. But I mean, I don't mind doing either this turn, just going deep. Getting 8 damage either way. One of them is going to be Vengeance and Lifelink, one of them is going to be flying. So depending on which you need. And then remember with the original Batter Skull, it sticks around, it has the germ attached to it. Whereas with the glider, the copy of the glider still leaves us a rebel token. So it kind of just goes to show you the difference in keeping a body around. I think if that matters to you based upon what you want in the moment. I think Batter Skull probably makes the most sense to me. I remember they get to both attack, right, because of Firion saying that equipped creatures get to have haste. I mean, you gain the 8 life here. Firion gets to attack, making at least one more treasure and potentially another one, depending on whether it hits. I love the idea of going for something like Slowbad, just to really, really take advantage of getting the the value next turn, right? Depending on what we play. This could sacrifice that Dragon Wing Glider for 5 more mana if we wanted to. There's a lot of options. Now, though, we have the opportunity to Magnetic Theft Batter Skull onto Firion if we want to give it Vigilance and, Lifelink if we can find a scenario where that makes the most sense. It's like I said, it's already what a 5/4, but maybe we have something else that can buff it a little bit higher, and then Magnetic Thefting that over to give it the the Lifelink could make sense. There's a lot of opportunities to really value. The nice thing about sacking the copy of the glider to Slowbad is, again, you'd still get to keep the rebel token. So my thought here is 4 mana. Slowbad gets to sack something as it comes in. So if I go Mask of Memory, I've got 2 mana left, but Slowbad can sack this for 2, right? If I want to, I can sack I could sack the copy for 2. So auto attach, right? So that Firion can draw some cards when it attacks. And then we could always, sack Mask of Memory main 2, right, to Slowbad. Not get to do it main 1, right? A little bit out of this time, we didn't see as much. I guess you can go for the Lizard Blades here. We could also have gone that route and just attach them up for the double strike there. I think there's a couple different, interesting options there. Have another one again because we didn't see that card draw, you could have argued we could have waited on the slow bet and gone the glider this turn, right, as well. And I think, again, we get to see the concept, maybe just my routing, right, not the best on that playtest. Let's do one more playtest, get into playtest number 3. Here we're keeping a 3-lander with Pip-Boy 3000. So equips for 2. Again, another equipment that's going to equip for free with the copy from Firion. And we get our choice. We can either draw and discard, +1/+1 counter on, or untap up to 2 target lands whenever the equipped creature attacks. There's the pickaxe whenever it attacks, getting a treasure. And then Thran Power Suit, again, for the War 2. And then we see Genji Glove as well. So a couple of interesting options. Again, we may not want to play these equipment yet, right? Because we get to equip the copy for free. So here I think we get Firion in. All right, we can play multiple equipment, get multiple things. My thought was maybe like Firion plus the Pip-Boy. Or sorry, Vincent plus the Pip-Boy, because I think Vincent's a creature we want to get growing. I guess we could also pick the pickaxe as well for more mana, because it's just on attack, right, that you get the treasure. And then, if Fear can hit, Vincent grows. If it doesn't, right, that's fine. And then the copy of the pickaxe would go away. Come to this turn, we could get the glider in. And then that might actually be better, because it would almost guarantee potentially a hit on 2 different people, right? Because they'll have flying. That might, right, get us able to get, a couple more counters on Vincent. I think that makes the most sense to me. Get the 2 gliders in with the rebels. I think we have a really good chance of getting right 2 counters on Vincent. Maybe there's a world where we get 3 counters on Vincent by having it attack somebody with menace. I mean, I don't know, but I think there's a fair chance that happens. Remember, the glider goes away, but the rebel gets to stay because it was made by the ability. And then as we come to this turn, we could masterwork the Dragonwing glider to get another one. Do that again if we wanted to. We could do infantry shield on something like Vincent to give it the ability to mobilize. Could be kind of fun. Thran Power Suit could be kind of fun. I mean, I have 5 mana right now. I'm trying to think. Masterworks 1. That would be 3. I wouldn't have enough for the shield. I could go Genji's Glove, but again, I can't auto-equip it. So my thought is Masterwork on the glider. Thran for Firion. I guess then I guess we could equip the real one as well. That'd be 5 mana. Firion would be a 7/7, right? With ward 2, it could attack. Vincent again could attack again. We're guaranteed to hit at least 2 people this turn, which means Vincent's going to be in good shape, right? Being able to now hit our opponents for damages. Sorry, I apologize. You still have the copy of Dragonwing Glider this turn, right? Because of this coming in as the real one, this coming in as the copy, right? So you've got a lot of damage on somebody here, right? And then, so Vincent's probably going to grow for sure. And you can stack your triggers so that Vincent deals... no, you can't because it's on damage. I guess you could put one of the Thran suits on Vincent to guarantee it. But either way, I think this is really nice. We kind of get to see this time that our resources worked out a little bit better. And I think we get to really see these for Mirrodin cards shine. I'd really thought about adding Sculpting Steel as well. And I think seeing some of these for Mirrodin cards in action, I think Sculpting Steel could make a ton of sense. It's very similar to Masterwork. The only difference is Sculpting Steel can come in as a copy of any artifact, not just an equipment. But I think the proof of concept, we kind of see working. But let me know, what do you think of Firion down in the comment section below? I think it's a really interesting deck. There's a lot of ways you can really take advantage of Firion. I avoided a lot of the high dollar equipment, a lot of the swords and things like that I think, right, they all equip for 2. So they're all, I think, great targets for Firion if you want to up the budget of the deck. I'd love to know what you think, and I will catch you on the next.